From Relay, this is Upgrade, episode 531 for September the 30th, 2024. Today's show is brought to you by Squarespace, Delete Me, and KRCS. My name is Myke Hurley, and I am joined by Jason Snell. Hi, Jason.
Hi, Myke.
We're back in our respective studios now.
We are back in our home countries of UK and California. So,
yes.
Yep.
Fifth largest GDP. It's probably not that anymore. Or maybe it is. Maybe it's number one.
Maybe it is. Who can tell? Who can tell? But we're back in our regular places and not in Steven's air-conditioned pod cabin.
Cold
so
cabin.
It's fine. Cold. It's very cold in there.
I have a Snell Talk question for you. It comes from Mark, who wants to know, how often do you change the wallpaper on your devices?
The answer is not very often. Not very often. I do. My current wallpaper is shot from Milford Sound in New Zealand. So that was my trip from a year and a half ago now. And I did catch, I think it was Steven. Was it Steven or was it you? I think it was Steven who saw it and was like, oh, that's a live picture, because this is why I kept it. I had a really nice, it was you? It's a nice picture from the boat in Milford Sound of the beautiful sound, which is basically a fjord, and the water is splashing on the boat and stuff. It's splashing around, and you can make live pictures into wallpapers. And every time my phone wakes up, it plays the little water splash, and then it's the beautiful picture. And I saw that, and I was like, well, this is great. And so I've kept that, even though I should probably, what I like to do is set it after like a big vacation. And actually this is a good example. My iPad wallpaper is now from Scotland, from our trip there.
Oh, lovely.
And I showed you that last week, probably while off mic and creating very low quality audio for the listeners. But sorry
about that, by the way.
We were distracted.
We did a bad job last week.
We didn't have headphones, and we were off target, and it was a thing. Anyway, I have that Scotland picture, and it's doing the little thing where the time goes behind the mountains, and then I discovered that when you flip up, the time raises up out from behind the mountains and goes off the top of the screen, which is like, that is totally unnecessary, but it's beautiful. Anyway, so that's a lot of it. It's really mostly when I take a vacation, and I end up with beautiful vacation shots that I can use as my wallpapers. So for me, that's what it is.
Yeah, I usually do vacations, and at most I change mine once a year. But I do use, like I use the photo shuffle face in certain focus modes on my phone.
That's nice.
Just so I can kind of see that. Like if I'm doing, whenever I'm recording, I change my lock screen to photo shuffle, and so I get to see more that way. Sometimes I'll use the photo shuffle thing in standby too. And as I've mentioned before, I adore the new photo face for Apple Watch, but my lock screen and my kind of my standard lock screen and my standard home screen once a year at most.
All right, Lauren does the photo shuffle, and it's constantly delightful. Of mostly, I think it's pictures of our kids. Yep, and it's great. So, but I mostly just kind of keep it. I actually find that a little distracting. It's that thing of like, I like to see the photos, but I also find it distracting to see the photos, because then I end up looking at the photos instead of doing whatever I was doing before. So I tend not to do that.
I see that, but I like it too. If you would like to send in a question for us to answer on a future episode of the show, just go to upgradefeedback.com and send in your Snell Talk question. This is the last day of September, which means this is the last time that we're going to ask you to go to stjude.org/relay, where you can consider donating to St. Jude Children's Research Hospital and helping us in the fight against childhood cancer. But today, which is September 30th, is a monumental day, as today, our campaign for this year passed $1 million raised for the kids of St. Jude. I cannot believe it.
We did it. It's
beside
amazing.
Myself right now.
We all did. And when I say we, I mean literally everybody in this community did this. Yes.
It's amazing. Truly an incredible achievement to pass this monumental number, and it always means so much to us. Stephen always will do a better job of explaining what this campaign actually means, and I will put a link in the show notes to a post that he put on his website today that touches on that a little bit. Like obviously we do this in honor of the work that St. Jude did for his family. But now, over time, I just think we've all gotten such a connection to this place and the work that they do. We now do it for the institution too. But to have achieved this in the 5th year of our fundraising and the 10th year of Relay, to have done this monumental thing, to have passed $1 million raised is incredible. I do believe that by the time this campaign ends, which we're actually closing it at the end of the week this week, we will also pass $4 million raised lifetime over the last 5 years. So
because we started this month getting ready to go over 3 million. And now you go 1 million and like you reset the clock and you're getting ready to go over 4 million. That's how counting works.
Yep.
I wanted to say, as a perspective on especially you and Steven, having been able to go to Memphis several times and go to St. Jude, that one of the things that I think is important is for people to know that none of us take you for granted. I can tell you, Myke and Steven are sweating every year about this. They are working hard and concerned and want to earn your goodwill to donate to this. And so I'll say that it seems like there's more money being raised every year by Relay, and there is, but like, again, everybody involved here realizes that it's asking a lot for people to donate money. And these days in this economy, no, I mean, like, it really is. Everything's expensive, and like it's asking a lot. And we make no assumptions, none of us. And I was sitting with Steven right before the beginning of the podcast-a-thon, and Steven, I don't know if you know this, Myke. Steven sometimes has some anxiety.
Yes, I'm aware.
Did you know that?
I know that, yeah.
And Steven, incredibly successful person who's raised a lot of money for St. Jude, sitting him before the podcast-a-thon, he was legitimately worried. He's like, "What if it doesn't go well?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we're going to do this whole podcast-a-thon thing," which I'll just point out broke the record for the podcast-a-thon. And he's like, "What if nobody donates?" So that's not quite what he said, but I could get the vibe, which he's like, he's really worried, and I find that actually incredibly charming, because I think it says something important, which is we don't take your interest in this for granted. We appreciate every dollar that somebody has earned doing something else, and then they're going to just give it to St. Jude instead of putting it in their pocket. That is something that needs to be earned. That's something that you need to actually feel like it's something that you want to do. It's something we put a lot of work into trying to get visibility for you so that you will consider it, and you should still consider it for the rest of the week. But like, thank you is what I'm saying. And we don't take this sort of thing for granted. We are blown away. I mean, I will also say you could sort of take a business-like approach, or Casey Liss, who called this the bag, the big audacious goal, when he suggested it, and we're like, no, that back in the spring, like, no, big audacious goal, a million. We're like, no, Casey, no, shh, quiet. But like, it's because we know that this is hard, and we don't take for granted, like, oh, it's going to be bigger next year, and it's going to be bigger next year. No, I will tell you, we are legitimately blown away that we broke 1 million. It is not just oh, shucks, kind of. No, we are legitimately, I can't believe it.
This is a dream.
Thank you.
Like,
yes.
This is a dream for us. And
yes,
once again, our incredible community has helped us live dreams. So it happens all the time, and I'm so thankful. But you can still give any amount, stjude.org/relay as well. If you've given, you should check if your company will match your donation. That's why we keep the campaign open for a few extra days past the month to make sure that we collect in any corporate matches. And you can go to stjude.org/relay to learn more. Also, I'll put a link in the show notes. Today, when things were picking up steam, me and Steven decided to jump on Twitch. And so if you want to see the road to 1 million and the moment that we hit it, that is now on the Relay YouTube channel, so you can go and check that out if you want. Thank you so much. Seriously, if you've given, if you've spread the word, even if you've just listened to us talk about this over the last month, we're all a part of it together. Thank you.
Thank you.
Some follow-up. So in the last episode, which when we recorded, I mentioned that I would have loved for the camera control to have the option to switch to the selfie camera, because you can choose between the cameras as one of the camera control options. That was then added in the iOS 18.1 beta. So there is now a selfie option for switching with the camera control, and I think that's great. So you can go switch between all of the cameras that are on your phone now. So that's very good. I'm happy that they added that. I put 18.1 on my phone, by the way. I figured
Good.
Now's the time.
Yeah, I think I'm on 18.1 or 0.1 everywhere now because that's where we are now. That's coming soon.
Jeff Johnson has made a Mac app called Amnesia. Its purpose is to disable the permission prompts for screen recording apps. I thought you'd be happy to know that such an app existed.
I have heard through the grapevine that the permission thing is even a lighter touch than we thought. I haven't been able to, because it takes time, I haven't been able to actually get the ability to see this. But I've heard through the grapevine that it may be the case now that if you continue to use an app after you grant it permission, it keeps kicking the permission down the road.
Interesting. I've only had it pop up once for me.
Right. So if that's true, if this is true, and this is secondhand, and I can't verify it, and I haven't been able to verify it. But if it's true, it's actually a pretty good solution, which is you approve it for 30 days, and you keep using that app, and every time you use that app, it just kicks it out to 30 days further, which means you never see it again if it's an app you use every day. It's only if it's an app that you haven't used in a while, and then it'll ask you again. Is that the right compromise? I don't know, but it would be a better compromise to not get in your face
I
constantly.
think that's good.
Right?
Like, if you don't use an app frequently, maybe it could just say, like, hey, are you sure you want to do this? I think that is the right way to do it. But yeah, if you're using it, like, a few times a week or whatever, then the system should just interpret, like, oh, this person is a user of this application. They must know what it's doing.
Yeah, I mean, and there are arguments, for other approaches here, for and against, but it's good. Yeah, so people found out that there's, and this feels very much like a loophole that Apple will close, but there's a P list or whatever, or a database that you can literally set the expiry date to be like 20 years in the future.
Yeah,
and then who cares? So it's great that this
Mac Rumors
exists.
Post says that it's not working on 0.1, but that might just be because the app isn't. But like, who knows?
Because any malware that would take advantage of that will just set it to later, right?
Yep.
Like, presumably.
Yep, you think so? But for now,
I don't know.
This app exists. Do you remember Masimo? This is the company that
I do.
Apple are embroiled in a fight with about the blood oxygen sensor in the Apple Watch. Well, Masimo's founder, Joe Chiani, has resigned as the CEO after he was forcibly removed from the board.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah, this is so Chiani is a real character because he founded this company, and he's a real believer, and he was very angry at Apple and is convinced that Apple has ripped him off and ripped his company off and hired away its people, and and there's some truth to that, right? But like, he's a very very grumpy man. And maybe rightfully so. Again, not really trying to make a judgment here. I do think it's interesting. So what happened here is that he only owns about 7% of the company, and what happened is that there were people who were unhappy with his leadership of the company, on like shareholders, and they did a board election, and Chiani's slate lost, and the other board people, the other slate won, and so basically he lost control of the board. And even though he's the chairman of the board, he lost control of the board because these other people were put on were not the people he wanted there. Apparently, his policy was that let's just ignore the board. That was as CEO. He was like, the board's going to tell us to do stuff. We're just not going to do it. Well, you're not supposed to do that. So what happened is the board removed him from the board. At which point he quit as you can't fire me. I quit as CEO. He quit as CEO, but he had lost the power. He lost the power struggle. Basically, the owners of the company, who were the shareholders, decided that Joe Chiani and the path he was going was not one they wanted to go, and that's how you lose control of your company that you founded. Is you don't own a majority of it, and the other people can turn against you and kick you out. It's got a little Steve Jobs energy to it. Just a little bit. Like, but I made this company. Yes, but you're fired. So we'll see what happens, because I think what's interesting from an Apple perspective, because this is not a podcast about blood oxygen sensors in general, yet. But it is a question about what will happen with Apple's presumably negotiations ongoing or stalled with Masimo over the fact that because of various cases that Masimo has won, blood oxygen sensor in the Apple Watch is turned off in the US. And the reason that I think that there might be something here is just what corporate boards do, right? What does Joe Kiani care about? Joe Kiani cares about his legacy. He cares about Masimo and not being pushed around by big guys like Apple. And he's going to take it to them and he's going to show that they're wrong. And I don't know whether he was being unreasonable in his dealings with Apple or refusing to cut a deal with Apple. And that's why we are where we are. But I think it's a strong possibility. It sure seemed from his statements that it was very personal. And if I know anything about a board of directors put up by a slate of shareholders, is I don't know the details of this particular move and exactly why. I don't know all the politics of Masimo internally, but I would say shareholders just want the stock price to go up. I mean, you could argue this is a problem with the public company model that we have, that in the end their priorities are not aligned with righteousness and truth and all the things that Joe Kiani talks about, but they're just like, can we just get the stock price up? But I'll tell you, if making a deal with Apple and calling a truce and being able to declare some sort of victory is perceived as being something that will raise their share price, they will make the deal. So I wonder if this will just kind of clear the log jam and allow a deal to be made, because maybe it won't be quite as personal. I think undoubtedly it was more personal with Joe Kiani than it will be with any other CEO or board. Even if they believe that Apple is still ripping them off and all of those things, it feels like maybe there's a chance to make a deal here and it's a little less personal. We'll see.
That's a very good take on all of this. My take is silly, which is fun for me. Like, I imagine that, like, Apple got to the board, and, like, got them to push him out. That's my fun alternate history. Out. It's like Succession style kind of stuff going on here, I don't believe that happened. Or did it? I don't. Or do I?
Yeah, there's a really, really good column from Matt Levine in Bloomberg about this called Masimo Has a New Boss. But he's like, if you're a founder and CEO of a tech company and you take the company public and it has a single class of stock and you own 9% of it, you work for the shareholders, right? You're the CEO, you answer to the board, but if the shareholders don't like what you're doing, they can fire you, even as the founder and CEO and chairman of the board. Because
and if you don't like that, don't take your company public. Like, if you don't like that idea, you shouldn't do that.
Or if you have enough leverage, be Mark Zuckerberg, and sell stock, or Google, right? And sell stock that can't kick you out.
Which is the way to do it. I don't know why more people don't do
stock.
that. I really don't know why more people don't do it.
I think they don't have the leverage. I think that you've really got to have the leverage to do that, because people are going to be more skeptical of an investment that doesn't contain governance.
Ownership.
I think is.
I want to provide a quick correction from friend of the show, Dan Moran. Hi, Dan. Dan says, I don't think it was Jeff Johnson who wrote Amnesia. I think he came up with the terminal commands that enabled it. Geordie Bruin, who worked on Mac Whisper, created the app Amnesia. I misread the Mac Rumors article.
All right.
Got to give a correct attribution.
To everyone. Yeah, thanks to terminal commands, thanks to people who put terminal commands in apps.
I wanted to give a couple of more thoughts that I've had having used my iPhone for a week, like my iPhone 16 Pro. I've switched over to the gold photo style. This is actually one of the photo styles rather than the mood ones. The undertones rather than the moods.
I got Spandau Ballet playing in my head now. Go ahead. Always believe in you. Yeah,
and it does a really good job of getting images to look the way that I want. But what I have been very happy with is, even in these photo styles, I am finding that if I take pictures of people indoors, they still look like they have gray skin, which is a problem I was having before. But now the tone adjustment fixes it. So this is all I want. I want to have the ability to be able to take photos that I like and be able to easily edit them. And the problem that I was having before is, even taking these photos into editing apps, I was always dealing with the baseline bad skin tone issue that I was having. It was putting too much shadow and too much I don't know what it was doing, but I didn't like it. It was putting a lot of shadow on people and making them look like 10 years older. And I'm able to adjust that now, and it adjusts the actual image, the base image, right? Because it's in the pipeline. So just basically like just fiddling with the tone setting of the photos gets rid of this issue. So this is all I wanted. You know, the phone's going to do what the phone's going to do. And most of the time, it does a great job. But when it doesn't, I now have even better tools to deal with it. Also, the ultra-wide camera, it does produce better high-quality images of things that are closer to my phone, right? You know, because it will always switch over to the macro mode. Still doesn't look as good as the main lens, but good enough. Better is what I wanted. That's how I kind of feel about this whole camera thing. It's like, this is actually, all of it is a lot better. And for me and what I like and the photos that I take, this is actually quite a meaningful system over year change. Like for me and the photos that I take, the iPhone 16 Pro is the best that it's been for many years. So I'm very happy with it.
Nice. I have been enjoying my Series 10 watch and the new watchOS features as well. I like the watch. It feels. I really like how it feels thinner and lower down on my wrist. Big screen is nice. It doesn't feel appreciably bigger to me on my wrist. It really doesn't. But it's always nice to have a little more room. You know, I still have the thoughts we had last week about the fact that I have a watch face that doesn't tick second by second, even though I've got a screen that can do that. That's just, they got to fix that. It's really bad. But I'm really enjoying the fact that live activities on my phone appear as widgets on my watch. I turned off the feature where it automatically scrolls up to that view when that live activity is running on my phone, because I find that kind of annoying. I like, though, I can just scroll up and see all of those things that are going on, even though I'm not looking at my phone, and that's really nice. And the other day, I was somewhere where I didn't have my headphones and had a minute, and it was just me, but I had a minute where I had to wait somewhere, and I played part of a podcast through the speaker.
Oh.
And it is not super loud, but it was audible. It was good. I listened to a little bit, just a little tiny bit. Nobody was around. Nobody, not annoying. Anyway, it was like a weird use case. But suddenly I was like, wait a second, I could just play this through the Apple Watch, and it actually worked. Went to a concert this week. Used the 5X camera because I tested the 5X camera on the Pro Max last year, but I did not use it regularly, right? Because I don't carry a Pro Max around. I bought the Pro, so I didn't have the 5X like continually. So I was at a concert and I was like, oh yeah, 5X camera, let's do that. And it just dazzles me. Like the 5X is so nice. The photos looked really good. I just continue to be impressed, and I know that that's not news for people who have the Pro Max, but like it's a really beautiful camera. I continue to be a little puzzled by camera control. I'm still not sure how I feel entirely about it. I like the premise of it. I don't love the added complexity of the extra stuff. I feel like maybe it's a little too hard to push it down. I'm not
your
getting
phone
in the
in a
habit.
case or not?
No case.
No case. Okay.
No case. I'm not really getting used to that. And then here's the other thing, and I don't know if Apple is doing something to counteract this or not, but I will tell you, I can hold my phone perfectly steady and tap the shutter button on the screen. And especially when you're zoomed in at 5X. When I'm holding it by the edges and I push down on camera control, it moves a little. The act of pushing in a button shakes the camera, the phone, a little bit. Tapping on the front of the touchscreen doesn't do that. And I don't know if Apple, I haven't done this systematically to determine whether Apple is doing something intelligent, like going back to the moment before I push the button, or finding a frame in there where the phone isn't shaking. But like, if the act of pushing the button makes me not get as good a photo, that's not good. And that's a thing that I've noticed is it literally, it is harder to keep the camera steady when I push the button than it is to tap on the screen. And maybe the answer is, well, in that case, tap on the screen. But like, okay, but what's the point of the capture button then if that's what's happening, the camera control button? So I don't know. I'm still thinking about that one. I'm hoping to write review-like stuff this week. We'll see. You know, I'm in that same point that I was last year where after the embargoes drop and everybody's got their phones, you know, I've got review units, which is great, but like everybody's got their phones and all the reviews are out. So I need to take some time and kind of consider what I want to write about it. So I'll get there. I'm hoping maybe this week to do that. But it's a really interesting collection of things that seem good and some things that seem like curious choices. But I'm glad they're trying this stuff. I think we've said on this podcast many a time that what we want Apple to do is try things, right? That like, give it a try and you'll learn some things, and maybe you'll have to fix things later, and maybe, you know, some things will be seen as a mistake, but you should give new interesting things a try, and they've definitely done that in a bunch of areas this year.
Yeah, I wonder about the pressing of the button, like if they're doing something to counteract it. I don't know. Because
I don't know.
I wonder if they do that for everything. You know, like I see
right
family members, they just press the shutter button too hard.
Yeah.
And I know they're moving their phone. So
they're
like,
tapping the phone,
I feel like Apple,
shaking.
I would like to believe that in the computational photography pipeline, they can use information from the accelerometer to understand if the phone has moved.
Right.
That would be my hope.
Right. And I don't know if the data is worse because the phone was shaking or if it can manage to do it. But it was a thing I noticed is that I was zoomed in at 5x and press the button.
That's when you'll see it.
And as I press the button, the phone jiggles. And I thought to myself, well, that's not good. And I switched to tapping the screen. It's like, I don't know. Is that what we are supposed to be doing here? It doesn't seem like it. It doesn't seem like it should be that way. So I don't know. We'll see. Because the reason they have to do it this way is that the camera starts out flat to the side, and then you depress it deeper into the phone. Mm-hmm. And on a regular camera, the shutter button sticks out, and you press it down. So it's a little more complex of a gesture. And I get why you don't want to have that button sticking out. Okay. But I don't know. We'll see.
This episode is brought to you by Squarespace, the all-in-one website platform for entrepreneurs to stand out and succeed online. Whether you're just getting started or managing a growing brand, you can stand out with a beautiful website, engage with your audience, and sell your products or services or the content that you create. Squarespace has everything you need all in one place, all on your terms. You can make the most of design intelligence from Squarespace. It combines 2 decades of industry-leading design expertise with cutting-edge AI technology to unlock your strongest creative potential. Design intelligence empowers anyone to build a beautiful, more personalized website tailored to their unique needs and craft a bespoke digital identity to use across one's entire online presence. And Squarespace Payments is the easiest way to manage your payments in one place. Onboarding is fast and simple. You get started in just a few clicks and start receiving payments right away. Plus, give your customers more ways to pay by choosing from popular payment methods like Klarna, ACH, Direct Debit, Apple Pay, Afterpay, and ClearPay, depending on where you're located. You can keep track of stats that matter to you with Squarespace's analytics. You can measure your end-to-end online performance with powerful website and seller analytics. Get insights on top traffic sources, understand how your reach is growing, track sales metrics, and learn where to focus new engagement. It's all the data you need to scale your brand or business, fully integrated and clearly displayed. Squarespace has so many incredible functions and features. I have been a huge fan of them, and I have used them for so many projects over the last 15 years for a very good reason. Like, they know what they're doing, and they have all of the stuff that I'm going to need to make the most out of any website project that I want to produce. But don't just take my word for it, because you can just go try it. Go to squarespace.com and sign up for a free trial today. You can build your entire website and see just how easy it is to do. And when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/upgrade. You'll save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. That is squarespace.com/upgrade. And when you decide to sign up, you'll get 10% off your first purchase and show your support for the show. Our thanks to Squarespace for their support of this show and all of Relay. Rumor Roundup time.
Yeehaw!
9to5Mac is reporting that Apple has requested samples of displays for an upcoming Apple Vision headset that are about half the resolution as the Vision Pro. Some of this information comes from the ELEC. We're going to talk a little bit later on about AR devices, but my expectation and the expectation of these reports is that these are for a cheaper version, like the Vision. But I'm also like, but is this a new version of the Vision Pro? And they're just trying to make it cheaper? Like, what is this product actually going to be? I don't know.
Right. I don't know. The big question is, what's their strategy? And we can talk about this later, but like, what is their strategy here? What are their long-term goals for this product line? Are they trying to get something cheaper that more people will actually buy because there's a real chicken and egg problem in terms of the content and the apps and the whole platform, really? So, are they better off making a new Vision Pro that's just as expensive, or are they better off trying to make something that is, $1,000 instead? Keeping in mind that their competition which is Meta, scrapped their more expensive headset, and they're like, we're not going to even do that.
In fact, they
more
just
expensive
released a cheaper one, right?
And they released a cheaper one. So
Ming-Chi Kuo claims that Apple is developing a second version of the Vision Pro, potentially for release in late 2025, that features an M5 chip. The report claims that this will enable higher power Apple Intelligence features, but there are still expectations from others that the current version of the Vision Pro will see some Apple Intelligence features next year, probably with Vision OS 3.
Right. Same question, right? Which is, what are they doing with this product?
Yeah.
Like, are they... Because they have the ability to just soldier on and keep updating it and keep working on the software and thinking, look, it doesn't matter that it's selling in incredibly low volumes, because it was always going to do that. It's with the price that it's got, there was no way that this was going to be a product that sells in high volumes, but we've got our eyes on something in the future that grows this. And I've felt for a while now that what they're really trying to do is get to the AR glasses that they just can't make right now. But the real question is, what are they willing to invest in this platform that is not very large, but might be important in the future? Well, now they're out in public, but like, what are they willing to invest to take it there? And that includes getting more users and putting more content on it. And is that another high-end model? Is that a low-end model? Low-end model is going to be expensive too, but it might be more affordable. And will people buy that? Like, do they view this as mostly a developer system that is about pointing the way to the future? Or do they think that there's a chance for them to sell a lot of these if they can get the price down? I don't know.
With new reporting from Mark Gurman, here is an updated timeline for Apple Intelligence features. So,
all right,
iOS 18.1, which we know is coming in October, that's going to have Siri understanding you more clearly. We'll have writing tools, like the writing summaries and the changing of text, notification summaries, cleanup and memory movies and photos, suggested replies in messages and mail. The suggested replies in messages are written by someone who's not me. They are so bad. I really don't understand why they're this bad. I never speak like this. I don't know why you think I would speak like this. Terrible. Yes. To call that intelligent, I don't understand what you're doing. Phone call transcription and the reduce interruptions focus mode. That's all coming in October.
Okay.
18.2, we think probably December. Available in more countries and languages. This is when we'll get image playgrounds and Genmoji. Genmoji, by the way, is a feature I do want. I've been thinking about it recently. Like, there is, like, it was raining the other day, and I thought it would be funny to make an emoji with a rain cloud over the top. Like, that makes sense. I would still just prefer if it was just, like, they take two emojis and put them together rather than, like, generate them. But if they look good, then that makes sense to me. Image playgrounds, hate it. Can't wait to complain about it more. And then also ChatGPT integration is expected in December. Then, early 2025 is an expectation for iOS 18.3. The new information is Mark Gurman believes this is when we could actually now see the beginning of enhanced Siri features, but we're not sure of which ones. Now, these enhanced new Siri features could include the personal context awareness, on-screen awareness, so Siri can see what's on your screen, and the deeper control of third-party apps via intents. If this doesn't come in early 2025, or not all of it. The expectation is then 18.4, which is pegged for maybe March of next year, is when these final features for the Siri integration will ship and be available in more countries. That is our current timeline.
Right. And I would say that the core of what we will think of as Apple Intelligence is actually personal context, on-screen awareness, and deeper control of apps via intents. The rest of this stuff is sort of like coloring around the edges with some AI sprinkles, but your phone understanding, or your Mac or your iPad, understanding your personal context and having its onboard LLM be able to search through your stuff. This is, I mean, Apple's already running ads with this, right? This is these are those ads that are I don't know if you've seen any of these, but they're things like, oh, what was that guy's name? I met him at this place. And it says, oh, that was this guy. And the
this is
like,
the
oh,
part
that's a relief, right? That's what it is.
This is what they have available to them to absolutely make a massive, massive impact if it works, right? Like everything else, as you're saying, everything else, they're doing nothing original. It's just in the operating system, right?
Yeah,
but
and it's stuff that I think wouldn't even be branded as a thing. This feels like to me, this is what Apple Intelligence is. Is personal context, on-screen awareness, deeper control of apps, and a Siri that understands you better and can do a give and take. I would throw that in there. But a lot of this stuff is like some summarizations over here, a transcription over there. Like, in a different environment, those might just get released as OS features and wouldn't be given any special names, right? But instead, it's been rolled into Apple Intelligence. But like, this is the stuff that gives them, like you said, something that might, if they do it right, vault them ahead, because they will be able to know lots and lots of things about you based on the data on your phone and use that in actionable ways. And that has a huge amount of potential if they do it right.
Yep. We'll see.
Yeah, but that's an interesting rollout, right? Like, just if you don't like what's there in this version, just wait, because there's more. They're just going to keep rolling this out. But
I will be very impressed with them if they're turning out features every 2 months. That I will be very, very impressed with them.
Yeah.
And I hope that it teaches them something about what their operating system can actually be like. Like, it doesn't all need to change just once a year. And they've obviously been moving more down this path over time, right? As they like show off stuff and then it comes later. But this feels like the biggest example of that idea, if things just continuing to get updated over a longer period of time.
And we're going to get, in a few weeks, 18.1 is going to ship, and the very next week there's going to be an 18.2 beta, right? And it's just going to roll like that too, where the betas are going to preview what's going to ship to customers, and it'll just keep going. And
they have public betas, right? Which I think they're encouraging people to get on at this point. So Thomas Buckley and Lucas Shaw at Bloomberg are reporting that Apple has once again made changes to how it's going to be releasing movies on Apple TV+. I'm going to read 3 quotes from this article on Bloomberg. Apple will now focus on making about a dozen movies a year, most of them produced for less than $100 million, because it is worth noting that many of their movies are significantly more than that, as we've spoken about on the show before. Apple's commitment to spend $1 billion annually on films won't change, but the makeup of the company's movie slate and release strategies will. And Apple will still aim to take 1 or 2 big theatrical swings a year with films exceptionally approved for higher budgets.
Right.
This sounds like a significantly better strategy. Buckley and Shaw compare this more to Netflix. Like they're doing more what Netflix is doing rather than what they have been doing, which is spending $250 million on a movie that shouldn't have had $250 million spent on it.
Yeah, I like the idea that they're still going to take a couple big swings. That allows them to make deals with creators that they want to make deals with, and maybe
like
get
this F1 movie, which I do think is going to be a success for them, provided that it's good. But it has the hallmark of the ability to do that. But you can't make that movie without spending a lot of money on it. That's kind of the point of the movie.
And if you do the math, what you realize is if they're going to make about a movie a month, most of them less than 100 million, it says, and about $1 billion annually. Well, I mean, you can do the math there and you're under 100 million. But what I like about this is they'll take a couple big swings, and the rest of the movies are going to be mid-priced movies, right? They're going to be like $50 million budget movies, $40 million budget movies. And I really like that. I think that that's a category of movie that is good, which is it's not meant to be a blockbuster. And I think maybe your chance of having success creatively and maybe even finding audiences for that stuff is higher. I like the idea that rather than saying we're only going to make 3 or 4 blockbusters a year, they're saying no, we're going to make 12 movies a year. And they're going to be 2 blockbusters, and then they're going to be 10 kind of like mid to lower budget movies that we're going to do. And I like that. I think that that's actually healthy almost. I mean, we'll see how it goes for them.
And in his Power On newsletter, Mark Gurman reported on some more details about Apple's home products initiatives. So, quote, the most significant product in development, I put this quote in here for you, Jason, is a tabletop device codenamed J595 that combines a robotic limb with a large iPad-like display.
Where's the robot, Mark? I thought you said it was a robot.
It is robot.
He seems to be off the robot train.
You can't
now.
spell robotic without robot, all right?
With a robotic limb. Yeah, but now it's not. They're not making a robot anymore. They're making a robotic. No, he's getting off. It's like he's on the methadone now, right? It's a robotic limb. Eventually, it's just going to be. It's got it's got an arm that adjusts.
Articulating arm.
Yeah, right. I mean, eventually it's going to come down to just be an arm that moves.
Yeah.
And it's not going to be a robot in any way, but he's got to get off of that very slowly. So he's backing off of it's a robot to being a tabletop device with a robotic limb, and we'll go from here. But it's fine. Like, this is a product that we've imagined, and it seems reasonable. And I think what's also encouraging is that he said, yes, they're also working on a non-robot that is basically like an Echo Show or a Google Home that is a screen.
Yeah. Quote, the low-end smart display is designed to run apps like Calendar, Notes, and Home, and will include an interface optimized for controlling home appliances and quickly seeking information. Apple imagined the device magnetically attaching to walls or sitting atop a desk. So, yes, this is a Echo Show, a Google, whatever they call it.
Or if you want to think of it this way, because I think there's a lot of mashing up going on here. Mm-hmm. Imagine a standby phone.
Yes.
A phone that's in standby mode, but bigger and with access to more widgets and control center and probably some apps like Apple TV kind of apps. Like it feels like they could assemble this out of pieces of software that they already have, right? Like that's how we felt all along. Yeah.
These new products will both run Home OS, which is adapted from tvOS, and Mark Gurman expects that these two will combine. So that Apple TV will run
just become Home
OS.
Yeah, makes sense.
This is the strategy, Apple. You're doing the thing, making a robot, which we all want.
We all want that robot.
And
J595, the robot.
I'm really happy that we have a little bit more detail about like the first thing, which could come next year. I want this device in my home, and so I hope that they actually do it.
Well, we talked about that robot a while ago, and I said it felt over-engineered, right? Like it felt very much like the original HomePod, where like, oh, it's got an arm and it moves and it follows you and it's all these things and it costs $1,000, and everybody goes, nope. And that's the end of it. And so the idea that they're going to have this awesome high-end articulated arm thing, and also a screen that's kind of like what we've always heard, right? It's an iPad with a speaker that you can put somewhere, and like, great. Like whatever that thing is, a smart display. I think maybe they're going for also the home control thing here, which I know that Google and Amazon do that, and I find it completely uninteresting. But maybe there's an audience for this, but I find it uninteresting. The idea that, you can put this thing on your fridge or on your wall, and it's a touch screen that controls your lights and your.
Yeah, but also it's a product that exists that you can speak commands to.
Oh, right? Sure. Again,
that is important.
I kind of like. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see how it fits in the home, and what use cases they're really trying to hit on. Is it's a good question, right? Because I get benefit out of asking questions to a voice assistant and playing audio through a speaker. I don't find myself like, if I want to control the lights in my house, I'll just use my phone or my watch or my iPad. I won't go over to my Google Home and go through the or back in the day, my Echo Show and like, oh, show me the Alexa interface with the things, and I just don't do that, but maybe some people do, and maybe there's some use cases there. It'll be interesting to see what use cases they're actually trying to address with these products.
This episode is brought to you by Delete Me. Privacy is important to us. Privacy is important to me. Like this, I live my life on the internet, right? So there is information that I want to be available to me. I am a business person. There are ways that I want people to be able to contact me. But that doesn't mean I want all of my personal data out on the internet. There are email addresses, for example, that maybe I don't use anymore and I don't want them out there, or other pieces of information. Delete Me helps you take care of this. Let me ask, do you ever wonder how much of your personal data is available on the internet? It's an uncomfortable thought, especially when you consider having too much information could lead to identity theft attempts, phishing, harassment, unwanted spam calls, just stuff you don't want in your life. But now you can protect your privacy with Delete Me. Having your personal information can feel a bit like leaving doors open, but Delete Me can help close and lock that door and keep it locked and keep your information safe, so you don't need to worry about having to wake up one day to find out that your information has been compromised. And it's why I use Delete Me. It removes the personal information that I don't want online, and it makes sure it stays off. I love that I'm able to tell them exactly what I want to be removed, and they take care of it. Delete Me is a subscription service that removes your personal information from the largest people search databases on the web, and in the process helps prevent potential ID theft, doxing, and phishing scams. Delete Me does the hard work for you. You get a personalized, regular privacy report that shows what information they found, where they found it, and what they removed. I really do love the transparency of that, so I always know where we are in the process. It's not just a one-time service at Delete Me. They are in your corner, monitoring regularly on your behalf. Take control of your data and keep your private life private by signing up for Delete Me. Now, a special discount for listeners of this show. So, you can get 20% off your Delete Me plan today when you go to joindeleteme.com/upgrade20 and use the promo code upgrade20 at checkout. The only way to get that 20% off is to go to joindeleteme.com/upgrade20 and enter the code upgrade20 at checkout. That's joindeleteme.com/upgrade20 with the code upgrade20. Our thanks to Delete Me for the support of this show and Relay. So, last week at Meta Connect, which is basically Meta's WWDC, Meta unveiled a prototype product called Orion. They showed this off to a selection of journalists and content creators. Mm-hmm. Orion is their ultimate take so far on AR glasses. Essentially, you put these glasses on, and you can see content, right?
It's the dream. It's Tim Cook's dream.
Yes.
It's the dream.
It's the dream. They have displays in them. They have technology in them. You can see, apps. You can make calls. It is what all these companies have been fighting for, like what they're working for. It is essentially, imagine the middle ground between Meta Ray-Bans and the Vision Pro, right? That's what this product is.
Yeah.
It's a prototype. It is not going to ship in this exact form. The prototype consists of glasses, a wristband that detects hand and wrist movements for interaction, and a wireless compute puck. And there's a wireless connection between it and the glasses to do a lot of the computational work. They have an OS. They have various apps and game experiences. Meta have said they are many years away from shipping a product like this. This was a product they're working on, this exact one, but it was going to be too expensive to make, so they decided they would show it as a prototype. Meta haven't said this, but it has been said in the reporting of this that it would cost like $10,000 if they were to sell it in this form today, which is why they have decided that they would wait longer, but they wanted to show it off. Very impressive work, and what they have shown, I think, is really cool. And I am of the thinking, there are lots of takes here. I liked your piece a lot. I would just want to put my thoughts out there, and then we'll talk about it in much more detail.
Okay.
I think this was a smart marketing move from Meta because they have established themselves as
in the game.
In the game. They are not just in the game. To the world, they're leading because no one knows what anyone else is doing, right?
To the world, to their investors. And I'll mention a detail that I thought was a core detail of what they were talking about, which is they said, we've got custom optics and custom silicon that we're building in this product.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, they're boasting, right? But it's more than that. They're also saying, we know what Apple can do, but we can do it too. And I think that's important, right? Because I think with Apple, you just assume, like, of course, they're going to have custom things and they're going to build their own chips. And that's a huge Apple advantage, is their custom silicon. And so Meta saying, no, we're doing that too, is kind of blunting. They're trying to blunt one of Apple's perceived advantages about this, while also taking advantage of the fact that Apple's never going to pre-announce a product or show a tech demo to the public. They don't do it. They just don't do it. So they've got some advantages there. But I think that them boasting about their custom stuff is also sending that message to everybody, including, again, the investors who are looking at this and saying, you're spending what on Reality Labs? How much money are you pouring into this? Like, this is why we're doing this, is because we think that this is going to be a product people are going to want and they didn't say this part too loudly, but in the 2030s, because that's what this is about.
Yeah. But I am also in the camp of people that believe that Apple has a version of this in a lab somewhere. I cannot imagine a scenario where Meta has done this and Apple have not done this. Maybe that makes me a fanboy. I don't know. And maybe Apple's isn't as good, but I just can't imagine a scenario where Apple haven't gotten to something.
Yeah.
That would be weird to me.
This is what makes me mad about this story. And my piece, I am trying to be super balanced. I point out that I own multiple Meta headsets.
Yep.
And
I think you did a good job.
I think that there's a lot. I think what Meta did was smart for them, and that they're taking advantage of an area where Apple doesn't have, they will not show something like this 3, 4, 5 years in advance. They just aren't going to do it, right? They never would they do that. And you could argue, in fact, maybe they should, but they don't. That's just they're not going to do it. But what bugs me is when people are like, well, look how much further Meta is ahead, because Meta has this and Apple still got the Vision Pro. And it's like, okay, well, the Vision Pro was announced more than a year ago and shipped earlier this year, and you can go take one off the shelf right now for $3,500. This thing costs at least $10,000 and doesn't exist and won't ship ever. And whatever it will ship. Even Meta says 3 to 5 years, which I just say, okay, 2029, 2030 is what we're talking about here. So it's not like you have to compare it to what Apple has, and we don't know what Apple has because Apple's not going to tell us. And so could this mean Apple is behind? It could. But it doesn't necessarily mean that. And what I would say, and I'm not, look, we have been very critical on this show of Apple's sluggish attention to Vision OS as a platform. If it's supposed to be this big future thing, why are you not pouring more visible resources into it? And maybe the answer is because they're pouring more resources into the hardware behind the scenes, or maybe they're lost and they're confused. And it's certainly a possibility that that's the case. However, what do we know? We know that Tim Cook believes that they're on a path for an AR product. Like, that's the whole reason they did this. The goal was never to build a VR product. The goal was to build an AR product, AR glasses, just like what was shown.
It's really mind-blowing to me that, like, I feel like there are people that I believe should know better to understand Apple is not building a VR. They have built a VR headset, yes, but, like, it's an AR product so obviously, but they can't do it yet. It's weird to me.
Look, Ben Thompson got to use this and he was blown away by it, and I believe him at how amazing the experience was. I believe him. I think that has power. We know how blown away we were when we put the Vision Pro on.
It sounded a lot like that, right? Like the people that saw this, it sounded a lot like how we were.
And then think about it. In Vision Pro, you've got your kind of limited field of view, and it's with those pass-throughs. And on this thing, you're just seeing the world, and the things are overlaid on it. It's pretty amazing, right? But what bugs me about Ben's take is that he's like, oh, Apple spent, he's kind of conflating what Meta's doing with one product with also what they're doing with the Quest, which is like, oh, Apple invested so much money in pass-through and all these big cameras, and you can still see the pixels and all that. But to me, the reason the Vision Pro is so focused on pass-through is because Apple's acting like it's an AR product. Apple's acting like it's glasses. And the reason they're doing that is because that's the product they want to make. They don't want to make a VR headset. They don't want to make something that closes you off from the world. It's why they have the dumb display with your eyeballs on the outside.
I do believe they also want to make that. But I think ultimately these are two separate devices.
I'm not entirely convinced that they, in the long run, even want to make something that's VR, although ultimately it doesn't matter because
they've made a really good product though. Like the VR stuff is actually really good, like the environments and stuff like that. I could imagine them still making something that does that.
It is, and it's possible. But I would say if you look at what the CEO's vision is,
yes,
the goal of all of this, you may get a computer that you can wear that's higher performance than the glasses that you wear at home. Or it's just another thing that happens when the technology improves that you can shut out the world if you want to. And it's like those the sunglasses in the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy that black out your vision when something scary is in front of you, so you don't have to see it. You could do stuff like that. That's true. But I think the primary goal of this whole project is to get to the AR glasses. Literally, what this Orion prototype is. So if we're talking about like, does Apple have something like this? I'll also point out, and I linked to it in my story. In January of 2023, Mark Gurman reported that they had the AR glasses project at Apple, and they set it aside to ship Vision Pro because they decided that it was not a product that they could ship right now. And by right now, I think we literally mean like by now, by 2024, 2025, they realized they couldn't do it. And what I pointed out in my story is Apple and Meta learn the same lesson, right? Which is this is not a product that's ready yet. We don't have the technology to make this a product that people could buy. And the difference is that Apple went and made a product that is also unreasonable for almost anybody to buy and incredibly expensive, but at least sort of like it gets their platform out there, which didn't exist before. And there are all the issues that we've detailed with the Vision Pro, but it's interesting that they kind of did that. What Meta did, again, I would say for understandable reasons, is show it to the world and say, we can't ship this, but imagine. And I see two companies going to the same place and racing each other there.
Yeah.
And, but they just take different paths. And, the fact is, a lot of people, because they want a fun narrative or because I don't know. Let's not even say why. A lot of people repeatedly throughout decades have looked at a promised product that doesn't exist and isn't going to ship for years, if ever, and compare it to what Apple is shipping and say, look, Apple is behind. But the problem is that Apple is not playing that game. Microsoft used to do this. Like everybody has done this where they know Apple's not going to release anything. So they announce something that's never going to ship, but say, look how cool we are. And then eventually something ships and it's way more expensive and way less useful and many more years later. And I mean, you can even go back to something like, is Apple behind? Apple missed the boat on big phones, right? It was 10 years ago now that they finally made larger iPhones. They missed the boat where Samsung had big phones for a couple of years and they didn't. But that was something where they missed. They weren't having a big skunkworks project where the CEO was convinced that big phones were the future. And 2 years pass and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because Apple ships big phones and they do really well. And there's a whole history of Apple being behind and then they ship something and everybody... The iPhone... I don't know if you remember this, Myke, but for 3 years before the iPhone was announced, people were like, where's the Apple phone? Apple's falling behind. Yeah. The Treo's out there. Sony's got their thing. Apple's missing their opportunity here. And I'm not saying that that's going to repeat itself necessarily again. I'm just saying it's a little frustrating that people read Apple's silence as that they've got nothing. And I think with Apple Intelligence, we can read it now and say, they kind of got caught flat-footed. Mm-hmm. But Tim Cook has been talking about AR forever, and all the reports suggest that this kind of product is Tim Cook's dream. They set it aside in order to ship something because I think they felt that there was a value in shipping something and getting the platform warmed up. But even when you look at Vision Pro, I think you can see this is from a company that wants AR and is less concerned with VR than they are AR, which is why they focused on the pass-through. And like I said, a year and a half ago,
they make, right? They make apps that are windows, and these windows sit in the real world.
And that's an advantage that Apple has because they have a platform with all the kind of productivity apps and not VR games, which is interesting that, now Meta is embracing Android apps because it gets them that, which I think actually makes a lot of sense for them too. I think both these companies are doing things that make sense for them. But if Mark Gurman is reporting early last year that Apple had already decided that their AR glasses were not going to be shippable in the next couple of years, doesn't that sound familiar? The difference is they didn't tell anybody, except I guess Mark Gurman. Somebody said something to Mark Gurman about it. But it's both these companies know that this is where they want to go, and they think there might be something there, and it's not practical today. So what I got out of this is I do hope that Apple has kept its eye on the prize. The kind of lackadaisical approach that Apple has taken to Vision Pro since they launched it, and I know nobody's buying it, right? I know it's a very low volume product, but I believe the only solution to that is to keep investing in it, and you just got to try to get some momentum so that as you move closer to your ultimate destination, your platform has some momentum and doesn't feel kind of just dead and there's tumbleweeds rolling through it. So that's all true, but like they seem to be going to the same place, just doing it in private. And then the details of this Meta thing are really interesting, right? Like, it's hard not to look at the pocket in the pocket that does all the compute and the thing on your wrist that does all of the sort of like detection of movement so that you can control the interface and not think, I mean, Apple has products that do that today, right? That's an iPhone and an Apple Watch. Yep. And I'm not saying that Apple AR glasses would require an iPhone and an Apple Watch, but I mean, they totally could. The Apple Watch requires an iPhone. Why not have the glasses require an iPhone and an Apple Watch to do that? Like, Apple has a lot of this tech already. They just don't have the glasses because nobody has the glasses because they're not a thing that anybody can ship at any price. So so what I get out of this is, one, I'm disappointed that people look at a prototype and overhype it as something. And I'm not saying like Ben Thompson did this. He disclaimed everything, but there's so much of like, let's compare this thing that Meta has that's not a thing and they don't have it, right? It's not a thing they can ship. And if they could ship it, nobody would buy it because it would be too expensive. And there are lots of pieces of it that are probably not even there in terms of the demo. The software is not in a position to ship to consumers or anything. It's a tech demo. So let's take it for what it is.
But they did
what
do
it is. Yeah. But if we take it for what it is by all accounts incredibly impressive. It makes me think that this product category is more likely to exist sooner than I thought it would be. I thought it would be more like a decade before a product like this really shipped. And now, based on what Meta is saying, because Apple's not going to talk about it, I think, maybe end of this decade is more realistic for it. Although, I'm excited by that. I think it's a really cool idea. The idea that you would have an interface, their interface is very Vision Pro-like as well. And the idea that you would just have little Vision Pro windows kind of hanging around wherever in your vision as you move around the world, but you're seeing the actual world, like, of course, that would be way better. I just want to put, as enthusiastic as I am about that, though, I got to put a cap on it, which is when these things ship, they're going to be really expensive. And there's going to be a lot of controversy and think pieces about, like, do we really want overlays on the world?
Yeah, I'm still in that camp. Like, I'm not sure I need notifications in my eyes,
in my face all the time.
I don't know if I want that.
Okay, I mean, we'll see. Maybe your AI agent will take care of it and it'll be fine.
I mean, but maybe though, right? Like, maybe.
Right,
I mean, this is the thing,
so,
right? So I mean, I've been talking about for a while, right? Like, when Vision Pro was coming, it was like, well, I'm not sure that this is what people will want, but this is the thing that technology companies have identified as the place they can go to, right? Like, we need to continue making the next iPhone. So what is it? Well, let's make VR, AR products, right? Apple was doing it, Meta was doing it. Then AI came around, and it seemed like everyone was like, oh, forget about that. We're going to go over here now. But now, having seen Orion, the conclusion that I have drawn, like others have, is actually the next thing is the combination of these two pieces of technology.
Sure, because that thing's also going to have an intelligent agent that's voice-driven or that you can control with your hands if you don't want to speak out loud. Yeah. And it's going to all be AI enriched, so it's all going to have, the dream of, and I know AI is very divisive, but I will just say the dream is that you have a personal assistant that understands you and can do your tasks. And that's where Apple's trying to go with the personal context, is that same thing. It's like it knows everything about you. It's private on your device. It's an interface to draw things up for you. You don't have to do as much drudgery in terms of like manipulating apps.
And being glasses and the way that these products work, it can see what you see. That is very, very
absolutely.
powerful.
Super important. That's why I think Apple should make the equivalent of the Meta Ray-Bans, is that you pair those with an iPhone and you've given your AirPods essentially a camera. And there's so much more you can do if the device can see what you see and know what you're looking at and know where you are and then all of that. Anyway, I want my wet blanket comment here is even if they ship this thing and it costs $3,000 or $2,500 or $4,000 and it's 2029 or 2030, whoever ships it, I think it'll be more expensive than you want it to be. And it will be a 1.0 product. I mean, I think that the truth is that Meta and Apple are both shipping existing VR platforms now so that they can do the software development for this in public, right? That's essentially what they're both doing. Is it'll be based on their OSs, Horizon and Vision OS, and it will come, and even then we'll have all those think pieces, and the battery life will be bad, and it'll be weird, and it'll be expensive. And if it is going to become a hit product where people actually want these things, I haven't even mentioned the fact that a lot of people are resistant to wearing glasses if they don't wear glasses. So,
I
not
wear
everybody.
Glasses, but glasses for me are an item that I want to be fashionable.
Sure.
And like I have the Meta Ray-Bans. I really like them as sunglasses, but for how I want to look, they are not what I want to wear as glasses.
Right. So there's some fashion challenges even if you are willing to wear glasses or you're willing to wear these glasses. There's a lot going on. What I'm saying is, if this is the next iPhone, my most optimistic guess that this would become something that would really have momentum and that lots and lots of people were buying it, my optimistic guess would be 2035, and my realistic guess would be 2040. Long time away. I think that's just the way it's going to be. And I'm saying that as somebody who's enthusiastic about this product category. So it's just going to take time. And that's the truth is we live in an era where companies have so much money that they can preemptively work on future products because they don't want to get beaten in a key product category. They have so much money that they just want to make sure that they win or don't lose. And that's what Apple's doing, and that's what Meta's doing. So, because Meta missed the smartphone revolution, and they don't want to do that again. They want to be there. And right now, it's shaping up like they're the strongest players because they were willing to spend the money. Apple's willing to spend the money. And if this is a product category as a hit, they will both benefit probably for decades to come. It's worth the investment, I think.
I don't know that Meta has or Mark Zuckerberg has new marketing and PR people, but I really think that he does. Because since Threads came out, he is a different person. His image, the way he speaks,
everything seems a little less weird.
Everything's less weird. He seems like more of a normal dude.
Yeah, he was very Howard Hughes like, where it's like, oh, weird rich dude gets weirder by the year. And now it's sort of like, oh yeah, it's Zuckerberg. He's a character, right? Just like Steve Jobs was a character.
Yep.
But yes. Yeah, I agree. I think been a little bit of a shift there.
Where they're like, oh, why don't we now just establish ourselves as a market leader? And they did it in a great way too, I think.
I would say that what Meta has that Google also has is a core business that is incredibly profitable. That doesn't make it's not cool. It's boring, but it's incredibly profitable. And you use that money to fund your other things. And Meta, for a long time, I felt like kind of didn't do that. They were like a business that was incredibly profitable and just kept doing the same thing or buying other people's things. But they seem to have turned the page a little bit now, where with the VR stuff and what their vision is for AR stuff and the Ray-Bans and Threads. And I feel like when Stephen and I were doing Download, it was during all of the kind of Facebook controversies and all of that. And it was so dispiriting and crushing. And I felt like Facebook was just a force to make the world terrible.
Yeah.
And now And I'm not saying they're forced to make the world good, but I'm saying now they feel like a tech company. Now they feel like a tech giant.
It's a different
They don't
vibe.
feel like a parasite that's just trying to ruin the world while it generates money for its owners. They feel like Google. I mean, they feel kind of like that. Like they've got products, and I look at some of their decisions and I go, well, that's real weird. But others I go, oh, that's very interesting, and I see how from a meta perspective that makes sense. So
I actually think
there's interesting pivot there.
I think the main thing that changed for them is they don't really seem to talk about Facebook anymore. Like,
that's absolutely true. That's
the
absolutely
company
true. Yeah.
is Meta, which great rebrand for them. They talk about Instagram, they talk about Threads, and they talk about the Horizon products. The Horizon Labs, Reality Labs. Like, I'm sure they spend time talking about Facebook when they need to. But like
sure.
I am very plugged in to technology, right? Obviously. And I listen to, a lot of interviews that Zuckerberg gives. And it's so rare for them to really spend time talking about Facebook. And I think that is key to the company. I think they're trying to move beyond Facebook. Right? And what he has clearly wanted, and I think during their struggles over those years, and the reason they didn't invest in stuff like what they're doing now, is he was flailing trying to find a platform, right? Like he wanted his iPhone, and I think he's found it. Now, whether he can convert that's what I mean. But like, I think he has found the thing that he thinks he can do, right? Legitimately, where he's not following.
I mean, honestly, the AI stuff they're doing is also very interesting.
Yeah.
Where they might be more of a player there than people understood. I think it's interesting. You're right. As silly in some ways as the Meta rebrand was, I actually think that it's been pretty successful in that it allows them to not be Facebook and not talk about Facebook. And it's successful in a way, I want to just draw a parallel here. Successful in a way that Google's wasn't.
I was just going to say that, yeah.
Because Google wants to be Alphabet or wanted to be Alphabet. And they're not. They're still Google, which means that everything else that goes on is seen through the lens of Google and Google Search and Google Ads and all of that, which is totally not what they wanted, right? They wanted it to be like a bunch of different products, including Google, so you could not think about Google if you didn't want to and thought about just this amazing tech company that has Google as one of its products. And they failed at that. And I would make the argument that they failed at that for a very Microsoftian reason, which is in the Steve Ballmer era, developers, Steve Ballmer era of Microsoft, everything had to be Windows. And it was destructive to Microsoft's brand because everything had to be tied to Windows, even if it wasn't related to Windows. And Windows was very successful, but it was distorting Microsoft's strategy and its brand identity. And with Google, I see a similar thing. Not only are their product development things all over the place and they keep destroying, they launch things, they shut things back down, makes people very sad and very angry, but they can't let go of Google. Like they can't let go of Google as a brand. So there's so many things that are just, it's Google this. Like they bought Nest. What is Nest now? It's Google. It's Google. Google Home. It's Google. And like Android. It's like it's Android, but it's Google. They didn't create a different brand. They didn't lean into Android. So it's interesting that Google tried to get out from under Google and then it just gave up. It seems to me. It just gave up. Meta, even though AI turned out to be more important than they thought, and that the metaverse original idea Mark Zuckerberg had, which I think was more VR oriented, has sort of faded into the background as he's become more interested in this AR with Orion. Meta seems to have done a better job of bearing, probably because they're not as proud of Facebook as Google is of Google search, right?
Yeah.
That would be my guess. Is Facebook is just an embarrassing product.
Well, they also
nothing
have a
but
cool
controversies.
One, right?
It's old media. It's social media for old people. It's not. It's very profitable, but it's kind of embarrassing. And then they've had numerous scandals, and they kind of want you to forget about it. And Google, like Microsoft with Windows, like no. This is core to who we are. You can't forget Windows. You can't forget Google. Or Meta is like, Facebook? Oh, I suppose that's a name I haven't heard in quite some time, right? I suppose that's still a website that's available that we own, but we're focused on all these other products too. And, I guess kudos to them to try to skate away from that one.
Overall, though, I like what they did here. I think this is good. I think it's exciting and
Yeah.
interesting. And I'm not saying they should, but if I was at Apple, I would at least consider it, like, more than before. You know, like, would it be beneficial to give someone an exclusive, to be like, this is what our vision for the next 10 years? I don't know. I don't know.
It's so what I ended up saying in the piece is a lot of different ways to play this game. Meta's playing by one set of rules, its set of rules. Apple's playing by its set of rules, but they're playing the same game and game on. Although really game on is when somebody ships a pair of glasses, because otherwise it's all pre-game. It's all like everybody jockeying.
They're setting the rules of the game right now. But like actually it
is, but like it's on. It's on, and that I think that's good. There was a time before Steve Jobs came back to Apple where Apple would occasionally do kind of exclusive things where they would show you some of the stuff that they were doing. It was a bad time for Apple, and it felt like they were kind of trying to justify the existence of their R&D labs by showing you ridiculous things that would never ship, and it's not very Apple. I do wonder, though, if there is a discussion to be had. At this point, it would almost sound like a Me Too with them is the thing. But I wonder if there's a marketing discussion to be had of like, why wouldn't we maybe next year at WWDC do a session that's like a special preview of where Vision OS technologies are going, that drops a bunch of really heavy hints about what Apple's got in its lab, just to make it clear what Apple's vision is for Vision OS.
Yep.
Because that is, they'll be 2 years on from announcing Vision Pro, with maybe no new announcements other than Vision OS updates. It might be useful for them to either under their own control or with a friendly media partner do a kind of what's Tim Cook's idea of where Apple is going with these products that allows them to kind of counter the perception that Meta's on this. Is Apple doing this or not?
I would maybe go a little further in my ideal. The reason being is getting the Vision Pro is partly out there to encourage development, right? So that when as Apple continues down this road, they will have a very good suite of products, like software for people to produce. It's not happening, right? Like for reasons we detail, for many reasons, it's not happening.
Yes.
Another way to maybe get this to happen is to be like, oh, by the way, there is a really good reason why you might want to consider developing for this platform, so you'll be ready for the next one. I don't, because look, I think Apple's usual desire to keep quiet, this is maybe one of the only times when I think they've been pushed hard enough that it might be worth responding. Because
in some way. Yeah,
last point, and then we'll move on from this. Obviously, the big thing here is what Meta has produced is a pair of glasses, a wristband, and a compute device. The issue they have here is Apple Glasses, Apple Watch, iPhone. That's what that is for Apple, which is why if both companies produce this technology and it's the same idea, Apple has a significant leg up because a lot of people already have both of those things. Yeah. That is the uphill battle that they're going to fight.
Right. Yeah, unless Meta, and this is an interesting question, like in the long run, does Meta partner with Android phone makers to be the compute device for it?
Possibly.
But in the short term,
or do they hope the Department of Justice can?
Well, I was going to say, if you could tie into the Apple Watch because there's some sort of API thing where they're forced to open it up, then maybe. But you could also just use Android smartwatches and Android phones and create a kind of an alternate path. Because I think Apple has an advantage in that people have iPhones and Apple Watches already, and they could use those, they could build those, and it's not unbelievable at all to imagine that would be what Apple would do. Is this works with your iPhone and your Apple Watch, and then you put these glasses on, and they're like our old glasses, the ones that just had a camera and speakers, but these now have an overlay, right? Because presumably at that point they'll have a product like that, and then this one has the AR overlay, but they're because any other glasses, any Meta Ray-Ban style glasses that Apple did would almost certainly work with iPhone and Apple Watch, right? And that would all be part of the equation anyway.
Friend of the show, Austin Evans, got one of these demos, and he produced a video, and he had a detail in his video that I've not seen anywhere else. So he sat down with Andrew Bosworth, so Boz, Meta CTO, And as part of their conversation,
Jaws Boz.
We're
going to give Jaws Boz battle. Jaws Boz battle.
Jaws versus Boz fight. As part of the conversation, they're looking at a previous prototype version, which is also the like translucent plastic. And Austin picks up the compute model and he's like, "Is that a camera?" And Boz is like, "Oh yeah, we were thinking about maybe doing other things with this, but we're not doing that now." And I was like, "Oh, so there was a previous version of this where they tried to put more technology in the compute thing, so like you could use it." Obviously, one of these was like, "Should we make a phone again?" I expect.
Also, it's a phone. I mean, it's a phone without a display. I mean, it's a phone, right? It's a compute. Oh, a module that has lots of computing power that you carry in your pocket. What could that be,
but
right?
Mark, don't make a phone. Don't do it. I know the temptation is there, but don't do it again. I don't think you can make that work. But you could maybe try and find a way to make this work otherwise. This episode is brought to you by KRCS, one of the oldest Apple premium resellers and your one-stop shop for all things Apple here in the UK. Mac is easy to love and easy to own. And if you're one of our UK listeners, you can spread the cost of any Mac over 6, 24, 36, or 48 months of Klarna and KRCS. That means you could buy a MacBook Air with M2 from just £22 per month. You can make your Mac truly yours, having the exact specification you want with pricing you won't find anywhere else from KRCS. Or you can choose from popular in-stock models and spread the cost with more affordable monthly payments. With free next working day delivery on any in-stock items ordered before 3 p.m., there's never been a better time to get a Mac at KRCS, your local Apple experts. Get more information at krcs.co.uk/podcast or click the link in the show notes. Representative 9.9% APR, 18 plus, subject to approval, and T's and C's apply. Please spend responsibly. Borrowing beyond your means could seriously affect your financial status. Ensure you can afford to make your repayments on time by the due date. Our thanks to KRCS for their support of this show and all of Relay. Let's finish out with some Ask Upgrade questions. Prathermesh asks, should the iPad get the camera control?
Oh, interesting. I am not a big fan of the controls on the iPad in general. I'll use the volume button to make sure the volume is down or up, but like I don't even use the sleep wake button that much because I have a cover on it. So I don't know. I mean, I guess something. I mean, I don't know. I mean, iPads are used. I'm trying to think of how you'd hold it, and it seems like not great.
No.
I
would
prefer
prefer an action button on the iPad sooner than I would want a camera control on the iPad.
Sure.
I just don't take enough photos with my iPad, and I do like take photos with my iPad, like when I'm doing design work, like I do it, but I just think with the way in which, especially the 12.9, the way I got to hold that device to take a photo, I just don't think the camera control would be ergonomically good. Like in the way we were talking about it earlier. Imagine that, you're holding this big iPad screen and you're like trying to get your hand up so you can press this. I don't think that would work.
No.
Stephen asks, Myke, how is your search going for new headphones since the disappointing non-announcement for AirPods Max? So, I did a little Googling around, and basically where I landed is the Sonys are the Sony over-ear noise-canceling headphones are the product that everybody likes. But they haven't had a new model in a while, it seems like. So I think now I'm going to wait for whatever is deemed to be like a really great pair of over-ear noise-canceling headphones, and I'm going to jump in on those. I love my AirPods Max. Like when I was traveling, I was watching them. I find those things very comfortable. I love the Apple's noise cancellation and transparency. I love how easily it connects to all my devices. But it's just feels like a product in the lineup, and I don't really necessarily want to be on that, especially with like flimsy cable that I have to use, and I want to be able to use a pair of headphones more easily. So like for example, when I travel, my over-ear headphones also become my podcasting headphones. And so I'm looking for a pair of headphones that actually do a better job for that than the AirPods Max do. Like the way that you have to connect the lightning cable to the 3.5 millimeter, like I just don't like that. I actually had a cable die on me on this last trip. Luckily, I have a spare for just in case this happens. So these are definitely on the way out for me. But I'm not sure where to go yet. I'm waiting for a product revision. I did have my eye on the Sonos Ace. Actually, they look interesting, but I want to wait for Sony because Sony have always been market leaders in this category, and so I want to see what happens there. Just got a good question in the Discord that I wanted to bring up actually from Tony, who asks if I brought my Vision Pro on the trip to Memphis. Didn't even think about it and was really annoyed that I didn't think about it.
Right, because you got solo international flights. You could have brought it and watch movies and stuff.
I was on my own on this trip, and so in the evenings, it would have been great to watch movies and TV on my Vision Pro, but I didn't even think about it. I was really annoyed about that. I won't make that mistake again on a trip like this because I did really want it, but I forgot about it because I'd never done it.
I watched a college football game in my hotel room on the Vision Pro. Actually.
See, this is what I wanted to do. It's just like for context, this is the first time I got on a plane since I bought it. I have not taken any more trips this year, and so it didn't even cross my mind. Right. But next time,
you keep it at work, and you were at home, and so it was like
exactly because I wasn't at home for. I wasn't at the studio for like 3 days before I left. So
so you would have had to think that far in advance about taking it, and you didn't do it. And all that. No, I brought mine. I didn't use it on the plane. I did think about using it on the plane and on that long flight back. But the fact is, what I've discovered is a long flight is a great time to watch a movie. But for me, you're not going to believe this, Myke. It's a great time to read a book.
No way.
I read like 4 books on my trip to and from Memphis. It's a great, and I think that's my happy place is AirPods in, noise canceling on, music playing, reading a book on my Kobo. I very rarely watch movies and TV shows on planes. And so even though I had my Vision Pro both ways, I didn't bother because I was just enjoying reading a book. So, but I did enjoy watching the college football game in my hotel room. That was great. I mean, it was bad in the sense that my team lost.
Okay.
But it was great that it was like a huge screen and I was able to watch, the big screen just on the wall of my hotel room. That part was great.
I still don't know if I could bring myself to wear a Vision Pro on a plane. I don't think I could do that yet.
Yeah.
I'd be too embarrassed.
You got to be that guy.
I'd be too embarrassed.
Yeah, could be.
The question comes from Pat. Do Apple Watch Series 10s outside the US have blood oxygen sensors? Yes, they do.
Yes. All Apple Watches have blood oxygen sensors.
Do they still? Because
yes.
this is a question I wanted to ask you. I believe that they do, and it would make sense that they do, but I don't know.
Apple doesn't make a special version. They're just not turned on in the US. They're non-functional.
Because they are given different model numbers.
I think it's still in there. I don't think they did any re-engineering. I think Apple has hopes that they will eventually be able to turn them on.
Right. Because I was checking this out in the tech specs. They're like, oh, if it's got this model number, it means it's disabled. But I think it's just a way that because they've hard disabled it with software, right? The firmware.
I think if it's that model, then it doesn't connect to the.
But I believe that there is nothing to say that a software update in the future couldn't re-enable this.
I think that's my understanding. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And Duncan asks, a question on photographic styles of the new iPhones. If you take a photo with an iPhone 16 Pro and view it on an iPad, can you adjust the photo style from the iPad, or can you only adjust the style on the phone? I often view and manage my photo library on my iPad. It's much easier with the bigger screen. So I tried this out today, and you can. I have an M4 iPad Pro. It's running iOS 18.1. I don't know if any of these things are limiters.
I think it's all 18. If you've got 18 or 15, I should say 15 Sequoia on the Mac too. It's just like all the other features that they've added to the phone. They then backtrack and put them in on other devices too. So yeah.
But I don't know about iPhones though, because I know you can't shoot photos with photographic styles on previous phones.
I think so.
But you
I
can
would be
edit
surprised if that weren't the case, that you can edit those photographic styles if you're running iOS 18.
Okay, but you can't.
I think so. Yeah.
You can't take the pictures, but you can edit them.
No, it's basically the Photos app senses that you are using one of those photos that's got the extra stuff.
Yeah.
And that extra data because it was shot on a 16, and then you can make those decisions. Like I'm looking at a photo I shot.
Oh, good.
On my Mac right now, and I absolutely have the ability to do. It's got the different presets, and then it's got the little box, and you can like use your mouse and click around and make it do what you want. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
If you would like to send in a question for us to answer in a future episode of the show, very easy to do. You can send in your feedback, follow-up, and questions at upgradefeedback.com. You can check out Jason's work at sixcolors.com, and you can hear his podcasts at theincomparable.com and here on Relay, where you can listen to me too and check out my work as well at cortexbrand.com. You can find us online. Jason is at jsnell, JSNELL. I am at Myke, IMYKE. You can watch video of this show on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube, where we are at Upgrade Relay. Thank you to our members who support us of Upgrade Plus, and thank you to our sponsors, the fine folk over at Delete Me, KRCS, and Squarespace. Don't forget to check out stjude.org/relay. Thank you so much to everybody who has donated this month.
Woo.
And most of all, thank you for listening to this week's episode. We'll be back next time. Until then, say goodbye, Jason Snell.
Goodbye, Myke Hurley.